Welcome to Rakhi's desk. Hi everyone, I'm Rakhi and this is Salesforce Record Level Security Part 4. And in today's session, we are going to cover scoping rules and restriction rules. In previous 4 sessions, we have already covered the different security options and the sharing mechanism provided by Salesforce. So profiles, permission set groups, muting a permission, OWD, roles, role hierarchy, sharing rules, account team, opportunity team, case team, and also we have done the hands-on on all of these topics in the previous sessions. In today's session, we will cover this scoping rules and the restriction rules. Scoping rules. Scoping rules in Salesforce basically allow us to refine the sharing by specifying which record should be shared based on the user criteria and the record criteria. And it let us control the records that your users will see in the list views, reports, and SQL queries. When you create a scoping rule, you will see this one. So basically the OWD and then sharing, and based on the whatever records are being shared or access has been provided to the user, then you can create a scope of those records as well. I mean further filtration of those records, and this can be applied to list view and reports. These are the permissions required to access the scoping rules: manage sharing, view setup and configuration, view restriction, and scoping rules. Suppose if you have all of these three permissions, still you are not able to see the scoping rules. In that case, please make sure your developer org is being created after the April 2022. Okay, let's take a scenario. In which scenario we should use the scoping rules? For example, we have an account object and the OWD is public read only, and we have 10 users, and through the OWD or the sharing access we have provided the 100 records access to these 10 users. Now we want to provide, or we want to create some scope for the list view or the report, so that the same list view for the 2 users should be only 20 records should be visible in that list view. However, the other user should be able to see all of those 100 records. So in that case, we can go for the scoping rule. We can create the scoping rule, and then you have to apply the scope filter by scope in the list view and the reports to make it available for those users. And the scoping rules are supported for the custom objects and few of the standard objects like account, cases, contact, leads, opportunities, event, and task. And you can have maximum 2 active scoping rules per object. Where it is applicable, the scoping rules, once you define the criteria, then it will be applicable for you can apply on the list view, you can apply on the reports, and on the SQL it is automatically applied unless a scope other than scoping rules is specified. Criteria, so we have the 2 types of criteria. One is the user criteria, where you can define the user criteria based on role, profile, or any other field from the user. Or you can have the permission criteria as well, which means you have some custom permission. Based on the custom permission, the user who is having that custom permission should come for that filter criteria for the record for those users. And the record criteria means which records you want to share. Okay, so let's see this scoping rules in the Salesforce org. Okay, so let me go here. Okay, these are my all previous sessions. If you have not covered, you can go to these. And now let's go to the sharing settings. So this is account object, and sharing basically OWD is public read only, you can see here, and there is no sharing rule has been created. So basically all the users of this org should be able to see all the account record. Now let's see, we have the scoping rules available in my org. I have already created a new org to enable these scoping rules. You can see here you can have maximum 2 active rules. I have created one, and let's see the criteria here. So this is just a name and then full name, description. It is active, and the user criteria, I have taken the credit type as a user criteria, and this is the role. So basically I have applied a filter for the role. So this role user should be, these are the set of users which are having a role as a NTO user role. Let me show you that role as well. So this is a NTO user. So this is the same role which we have applied in the scoping rule criteria. Okay, then this is the record criteria, means what record should be applied in the filter. So these are basically the account type. If it is a customer direct, those record will be shared or will be accessible to this one with this scope. So scope is basically a type of filter, okay, so that you can apply further on the list view or the record reports. So this is the criteria, this is the scope rule, and now let's see where we have applied this. I have applied on the all account. This is a list view, and this is the filter by scope that I have applied here. I'm As a system administrator, I'm able to see all the records. If I log in with the other user who is from the same role, I mean which role we have added in the scoping rule. So this is the NTU user role, and this is John Verma. I have logged in with this user. Now let's see the account records with this user in the same list view. Okay, so this is all accounts, and I'm able to see the record only from the type of customer direct. Okay, and if you want to see that this is a filter criteria has been applied as a filter by scope. Now suppose if I want to see any other list view or any way, like other way to access the record, so that scope is not applicable, because it is applicable only for the particular list view which you have assigned, you have manually applied. But here you can see like the same user is able to see the other records in the different list view. Okay, and suppose if the same list view, the all account and any other user which is not from that role, I mean not from the NTU user role. So this is the user Amit, and you can see this is the NTU manager, not the NTU user role, right? So if I try to see the same list view I want to access, the filter criteria is the same. Okay, let me just refresh it. Okay, and let's see the filter criteria. This is the same list view. The filter criteria is same, but I'm able to see all the record because this Amit is not from the same role, right? So that criteria does not met for this user. So that's why I'm able to see all the records. Now let's see what are the other options to create a sharing rule and the different criteria. So let's create a new scoping rule here just to show you the different options. Okay, you can add the name and description. Here you can see the user criteria that we have already applied in that previous sharing rule, previous scoping rule. This is the permission criteria, right? So permission criteria means it will only show if you have any custom permission in your org, like this one I have, right? You can just select this one and then you can add the filter criteria for the record as well. This is for the scoping rules. Now let's move to the restriction rules. Okay, so restriction rules. Restriction rules let us control which records a specific group of users are permitted to see. So suppose for a user we have already applied a restriction rule, then the data which was earlier available for user via either OWD or sharing rule or any other sharing mechanism, but that is filtered by the record criteria that you have defined in the restriction rules. So the same permissions are required to access the restriction rules as well. The similar, if you want to create a new restriction rule, you will see this screen, like, and how it works basically. So OWD sharing mechanism, the same like which we saw in the scoping rule as well. So then you can filter those record, or you can filter those record for restriction for a particular user or set of users. Okay, so now let's take the example for this one, and now let's see how it's different from the scoping rule and how it is similar to the scoping rule. So when you define a restriction rule, the similar, the criteria you will see for the scoping rule, which we have already seen, right? The permission criteria and the user criteria. Similarly, you will see for the restriction rules as well. So while defining a restriction rule, it's completely similar to the scoping rule. But from the how it's different, so basically scoping rule just provide a filter, right, that you can apply on the list view or reports manually. But the restriction rule is used for restricting the user for some limited set of records, and that is automatically applied to everywhere from where the user is trying to access the record. So we are taking the similar example, however I have taken the different object, which is a custom object job position, and OWD is public read only. Here also, like suppose the 10 users are having the access of 100 records, through some access, maybe like OWD or the sharing access. Now we want to restrict maybe two users. We want to restrict the two users to access only 20 record out of these 100 records. So in that case, we can create a restriction rule. And supported object, so basically all the custom object and external object are supported for the restriction rules. However, in the standard object, you will see only very few options are there. So only few objects are supported for the restriction rules. And similar to scoping rule, the restriction rules also, you can have maximum 2 restriction rules active per object. Criteria type completely similar to the scoping rule, the user criteria, permission criteria, and the record fields criteria as well. Where it is applicable, so in case of scoping rule, we were applying manually, right, on the list view and the reports. However, when you create a restriction rule, it will be automatically applied to all of these places. Wherever you're trying to access the record, you will be allowed to access only which is as per the criteria defined in the restriction rules. So list view, lookups, related list, reports, and if you're searching any record, SQL, SOSL, everywhere it will be applicable. Now let's see these restriction rules in the Salesforce. Okay, so let me go to the restriction rules. Okay, so this is a job position object. We can see the sharing setting, the OWD is for the job position object is the public read only, and there is no sharing rule I have created because I have provided the read only public read only. So all the users of this org will be able to see all the job position records. Now let's see, you can see on this object we have the restriction rules, and like scoping rules are also available. You can define the scoping rules all well, right? So I have already covered the scoping rules on the accounts object, so I'm going to only for the restriction rules now. And for creating a restriction rule, you will see the similar screen which we have already seen for the scoping rule. You have the similar criteria are there. You can define whichever you want to define. So we have already covered this user criteria. In this current one, I will use the permission criteria. So I have already created a restriction rule using a custom permissions basically. So permission criteria we have applied here. You can see there is a custom permission ABC underscore custom permission. Okay, so if the user is having this custom permission is assigned to him or her, then that user will be able to access the only these record, I mean the permanent job type record in the job position object. Okay, so now let's see. I'm just going to one user. So this is the John, you can see, and if you see the permission set, it has the NTC permission set, right? If you go to this NTC permission set, then you will see the same custom permission which we have taken in the restriction rule criteria. So basically, if this user is going to access the job position records, it will he will be only allowed to access the permanent job type records. So if I refresh it, you will see only these. Even if you try to access any record directly, maybe, okay, let's try this one. So I'm just opening the record from here, and it's a contract type, right? So ideally, if John is trying to access this record, he should not be allowed. Let me just try this one with that user. Okay, so this is John user. You can see this record is not accessible because the access is not provided. Okay, so from the sharing setting wise, if you see, like the user should be allowed, right? Because it's a public read only, but we have defined the restriction rule. So just because of the record criteria of the restriction rule, it's not allowing this user. But if there is any other user, and if you try to access all the job position records, suppose this is a different user and it does not have that permission set, like NTO permission set. So let me just try this one. Okay, all job positions, you can see all the records are visible to a different user which does not have that specific permission set of the custom permission, and that is the reason user is able to see the record. Okay, so we have seen how the restriction rules are working here. Okay, so that's it for this session. We have covered and we have seen in the Salesforce org as well, like how the scoping rule and restriction rules are working. Okay, thank you for joining this session.